What I've said is that it is absolutely important that we have a financial system and a currency system that is not 100% digital. So where I think the current leadership and central bankers are going with the going direct reset is I think they're trying to get 100% digital control grid and literally end currencies as we know it and move us to, on the smart grid, a transaction system where they have 100% control. To be a hero, you must first survive. I'm watching a control grid snap into place. I don't know if you saw the announcements from the Russians and the Americans about regulating crypto, or you saw in the EU, they're trying to morph the green passport or the vaccine passport. Now they're calling it a private digital identity wallet. And we're watching the tax authorities add biometrics. PayPal is adding, and all the online systems adding. So you're watching the financial system coming in and slowly getting closer and closer to building a control grid. But that control grid is not so much control of the technology as the people. So I don't know if you've looked at the Australian forms, but you require the exchanges to license. You switch the payment system so the on-off ramp is through the big banks. Now the Brits are coming out and saying cyber security efforts have to be professionalized. And of course, everybody's getting mind controlled through their computer or their smartphone. So you've got a control grid snapping into place, which is not just control of money or cryptos, it's control of people and everything. And it works right now. For the last 30 years, it works like a covert social credit system, but it's invisible and it's covert. And people don't, they know the financial line and the surveillance mind control line and the covert operation lines are integrated and connected, but it hasn't been made overt. And one of the reasons it hasn't been made overt is they haven't been able to bring the constitutions down, although they're trying. We have been up against an invisible machinery. I mean, I would describe the social credit system or the covert social credit system. So I go back to the control grid. If you look at the control grid operating, operating again on out of the federal credit and the nuts and bolts of the financial system, out of the telecommunications and the mind control and the propaganda, and out of the covert operations, I would say that we have never reached a point until COVID-19 when a significant number of highly educated professional people with skills and resources were prepared to admit that they were up against a coup. In other words, you couldn't see, the majority of the population could not see the control grid moving in on them until very, very recently.
Okay. So when did it start though? So this, because I really want to tie the roots back because we might find something there.
So this goes back centuries. I mean, the control grid goes back centuries, but
before the Constitution, after the Constitution?
Before. Okay. So if you look at the history of currencies, there is a pattern that I would love to see research of. You have a plague, you institute plague laws, you use the plague laws to reset the economy, and you bring out a new currency. So this is, we've been to this movie before. But for my lifetime, I would say the vast majority of people felt that they were the beneficiaries of the system and they weren't going to interfere with how the system was operating and the growing corruption, because their fiduciary obligation to themselves and their family was better served by keeping their mouth shut and going along. And it has only been until recently that you see a critical mass of people saying, okay, we have to do something, we're not going to go along. New technology comes out, we let things blossom, then we centrally control. And we're progressively moving towards more and more central control, making the system, as you described, more and more unstable. And we're in another one of these periods where we've been prototyping with new technology and now it's consolidating into central control.
Totally.
But it doesn't have to operate like that.
So how do we stop it from operating like that?
That's what we're talking about. My tactic has been, bring transparency, and find out how to prototype decentralized economics that create explosive new wealth. And where I keep falling down is I'm not able to get a critical mass of people to figure out how to protect themselves from the mind control and the sabotage. This control grid is snapping into place. And this control grid controls by controlling people one person at a time. I mean, they have AI, they have software, and the more money the taxpayers pay for this control grid to operate, the more money Mr. Global makes and his companies. So from a financial standpoint, there's no amount of money that you can't spend on the control grid. Now, I would say I know very few people who see that control grid operate in their intimate space, let alone understand that it's there.
Correct. Totally. So people are blind to it. So
how do we get them to see it before it snaps shut on them?